In this episode of Crystal Uncorked, I am talking to Brandy Searcy of Rain Organica, and we are talking about business, the lessons she's learned in the first year of having her business, but also some pretty amazing tips and things that you probably didn't know about skincare and about sunscreen. Brandy talks about how she does not wear sunscreen, yet we live in Southern California. She is in Vista, Vista has the best weather of all of the country, and she doesn't wear sunscreen. So that was fascinating. I love these business tips, these things that she's learned, habits she's creating for herself to create more balance in her personal life and business life, and how that's affected her business, a pivot she had to take to really increase momentum in her business, which you really want to have in those beginning years. Before we dive in, I just want to quickly read you her bio. Brandy Searcy is a pharmaceutical formulation development scientist and self-proclaimed health geek who loves hiking, gardening, bird watching, and bodyboarding. A personal struggle with acne during her teens and 20s opened her eyes to a holistic and healthy approach to skincare, and she finally recognized skin as an organ to be loved and cared for rather than a canvas to wage war on. Man, love it, Brandy. For the past 12 plus years, she's been developing an all-in-one product for a simple skincare routine. Rain Organica started in 2020 with a mission to take the overwhelm out of skincare. She is leaving my listeners with a 15% off offer at rainorganica.com. Use Crystal Uncorked when you check out. We also have a free guide for you too. We'll link to the show notes. Follow her on Instagram as well, Rain Organica. And let's dive into this episode. Hello, I'm Crystal Vilkaitis. I'm a curious, wine-loving entrepreneur who loves to learn and have open and honest conversations. Join me and my amazing guests as we talk about all sorts of relatable business and life stuff. It's my goal that you'll have fun, learn something new, and get inspired. Wine is not required, but is recommended. This is Crystal Uncorked. Brandy, welcome to Crystal Uncorked. I'm so thrilled you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so glad to be talking to you, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh my gosh. So we are really lucky actually because Brandy and I got to have wine in person last week. You watched the show. You found me through Dr. Michelle Wolford's episode, which was so great. Reached out and was like, I'm local. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. That doesn't happen very often. So we had some great wine. And speaking of, let's talk about what we're drinking. And then we're going to get into our episode today. What do you have?
So I have a glass poured up in my fancy wine holder.
Love it.
Of the Pundit, which I picked up at Costco because of this beautiful label. And it is exceptionally good wine. So it has a lot of sediment. So when I uncork it, I typically wind up with purple fingers. Just to give you a heads up in case you want to try it.
Oh my gosh. I have to try it. What kind of wine is it?
I believe it's a Petite Syrah. Let's see. Yes, it's a Columbia Valley Syrah.
Oh.
It's actually produced by Chateau Ste. Michelle, or at least their winemaker had a hand in it. So, yeah, definitely good stuff.
Good stuff. Oh my gosh, I have to check that out. I was totally at Costco last night. I should have asked you what your wine was. I could have got a bottle. We could have had the same thing. But I will try it because I love Syrahs. I am drinking, it's a blend called Three's Company from Akash, which is a winery in Temecula. Got the opportunity to go there and interview the winemaker. It is, I always say like 14% higher, the bold wines I really love. This one's 13.9, almost there, but it's just like so bold and smooth. It's amazing. So Brandy, cheers.
Cheers.
All right. So, like I said, Brandy and I had the opportunity to get some wine last week, chat about all sorts of stuff. I mean, I don't know if you felt this way, Brandy, but as an adult, you don't really meet new people and like go out and you don't know them and like network and kind of learn. I feel like I did that a lot as a kid or when I was like, in my 20s, kind of like I went to every networking thing I could possibly go to. But now with COVID, we don't have a whole lot of those yet. And as an adult, you just don't always make new friends and find new people. So that was such a treat.
It was such a treat for me as well, because yes, outside of work and outside of the neighborhood, I don't really get out much. So it was it was awesome treat for me as well. And I feel like I had the upper hand in that because I knew you some from listening to your podcast.
Right.
And of course, I love that you're drinking Akash wine today because I listened to that episode last week.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Oh my gosh, Akash. I love it. It really was a good episode. I mean, that was so amazing that he let us do that right there in the vineyard. You have to try their wine since you're local. And when we were chatting, we were talking about like you just started your business in 2020, last year.
Yeah.
And of course, like all business owners, there's a million things that you learn. You picked one hell of a year to start a business, that's for sure. But that really can be a great time. I mean, I'm just such a believer, and I said this on a previous episode, like through crisis and pandemics, we really can have innovation and breakthroughs and some really amazing things. It's not a reason not to start one, but you just did it was an interesting year. And I would love for you to share some of those lessons that you have learned over this past year of owning your own business. Before you do that, will you just give my listeners a little bit of a background of like what made you start your business, Rain Organica?
Sure. So I started struggling with acne during my teens and into my early 20s. I tried literally everything on the market. I mean, my mom is a registered nurse, and I grew up in South Georgia. She is such a great mom. She took me to, I think, every single dermatologist in the southern half of the state to try to figure out something that would work for my skin. And I wound up on a course of Accutane, started having some side effects that they weren't life-threatening, but they were scary enough to make me decide that I was going to stop treating my skin like a battleground and start treating it like an organ to be loved. And with that, I put down the Accutane. I didn't finish that course of it. And then and there, I did a 180 with what I was putting onto my skin. So I would diligently spend hours. Now, this was back in the early days of the internet, before the days of smartphones. So it was a lot harder to do research, especially on the fly, like when you're standing in a store, picking up and looking at ingredients lists than it is now. However, I would still spend, I'm serious when I say hours, going through, looking at the ingredients list, inevitably putting things back because there was either something that I knew would cause my skin to break out, or there was something in it, usually something that was photosensitizing, that I didn't feel comfortable using on my skin, so I would set it back. I did this for a few years until 2008. In 2007, I actually landed a job in formulation development and found out that this realm existed because there are very few universities where you can get a degree in formulation development. To my knowledge, there's only one in the country, and that's in Texas. And of course, back then I had no idea it even existed until I landed a job in that area. And yes, it was a job in pesticide formulation, completely remote from skincare formulation. Still, the basic concepts are the same. And knowing that this field existed, I just started avidly researching it and bought some ingredients and started making my own skincare. That was in 2008. Finally, in 2020, I decided to launch my own skincare company. And yes, this sounds a bit crazy for many reasons. COVID is one of them. The other reason is the skincare market, many would say, myself included, that it is oversaturated. So what could yet another brand really add to the market? I feel like what Rain Organica offers that is completely lacking in the market is basically a simple way to select skincare without it being overwhelming, and a simple skincare routine.
Which it is completely overwhelming. And it's so funny. My dad recently was like, you should get into the cosmetics industry. That's been around since the Egyptian times. And it's such a big industry. And I'm thinking it totally is, but it is so competitive. And from a consumer perspective, it's really challenging. And there are so many things that are hidden in all of our skincare. I am not great at reading labels. Pauline, who's on my team, was on the show, is really aware of what she's putting on her skin, often sends me stuff, which I really appreciate. Can't wait to try Rain Organica. But, it's a simple process, right? Like you just make it really simple and easy for your skincare routine is what I'm gathering.
That's absolutely right. So for me, I want something fast that I can do every day instead of something high maintenance that I may keep up for a week. So,
right.
And I also want to be able to take my skincare routine with me anywhere I go, because this was something else I noticed with having acne prone skin is anytime I switch up a product, I typically wind up with a breakout. So I wanted to avoid that at all cost. And who wants to lug around a 12-step routine when you travel? Nobody.
No. No way.
Right. So I wanted to keep it 3 steps or less. And one of my friends who loves to backpack said she just doesn't feel like a human if she's not able to brush her teeth and wash her face at night. And so with that, I really latched onto this idea of why not really make it something you can carry anywhere and use anywhere, even in the backcountry where you don't have access to running water. And so that was a major driver for the products as well, was, okay, can I really carry this anywhere? And then the other thing that I wanted to completely eliminate was, how do you define oily, combo, or dry skin? And this was so problematic for me as well. And it feels like because brands have their own, it feels like most of them have their own definition of what those terms mean. Mm-hmm. So I was never quite sure if should I get the one for oily skin or the one for combo skin. So I wanted to do away with that as well and make the products universal. And yes, that's a challenge, but it's not impossible. And I feel that I've hit on that in just 3 products. So basically a cleanser, a toner, and a moisturizer that are universal regardless of your skin type.
Love it. And so I didn't realize this, that you kind of started out formulating pesticides, but then learned so much from that, took your own desire for skincare and started creating something that could be simple, that could be on the go, that could work, and that was good for your body, for your skin. And then here you are, 2020, you launch. And I know that you definitely had some learning moments. And it sounds like one of those big ones was around branding and the brand and the messaging. I would love for you to kind of take us through what happened and kind of your aha moments, because it ended up being really powerful for you to learn that early on.
It definitely was powerful. So one of the things that I focused on before launching was really getting the branding right. So I spent a lot of time defining my ideal customer, figuring out who she is, and figuring out the conversation that I wanted to have with her. However, that conversation that I selected really isn't my native language. And I think it's a great opportunity for somebody. I don't think it's my calling, and I don't think it's how I should be communicating with her. And so that's really what changed. My ideal customer is identical from launch until today. That conversation has shifted so much in the past 6 months, really since March, which is when I decided to launch my own podcast. Was kind of it was a defining moment, and just completely shifted my perspective on the conversation that I should be having. And I read something recently that says, to be heard, You must speak the language of those who listen. And I feel like that is so profound, and it speaks so much to me, because I think initially I'd selected the wrong conversation. And while Rain Organica had some initial smaller wins, and really the brand launched with a focus on having the conversation with people who hike and people who backpack. And what I discovered, at least, and I'm not saying that those people aren't out there, I'm saying what I've discovered through Instagram and my own personal journey is that most of those people are extremely extroverted. Most of them have flawless skin by the grace of God. And they don't have a whole lot of health problems. And my native language is more functional medicine, more holistic health, more even Western medicine, science. All of that is more my native language. It's not, where are we going to go hiking this weekend?
So you were having the wrong, you identified this, what I always call your PCGs, your perfect customer groups. So one of those, that avatar, was this girl who needs to be easy, but she is hiking and she cares about her skincare. And as you were moving into talking to that person, you were like, whoa, this is so not the person. This is not the conversation I want to be having. I want to have more, almost like a deeper conversation and talk about other things. And then that is part of where your podcast launched March of this year, right? Right. Which we totally started in the same month. There must have been something happening energetically there with the stars. I'm very much into astrology for us to be like, we're doing it. But yeah, I mean, you learn, but this is something we talked about at Wine. It's like, one thing I just love is that you didn't wait till you had it all figured out. You just move forward. And that's where, how else are we ever going to know without just doing? And so you launched, you thought you had this perfect customer in mind, but she changed, which is so okay. Anybody listening to this, that is so okay. Things evolve, things change as we learn. And then you got a little bit more clear. And then what kind of happened? Did you feel like you started getting momentum after that?
So I definitely feel like yes, because so to answer your question simply, yes. So a few things happened around that March timeframe. I started reaching out heavily to podcasts as well to be a guest on other podcasts. And the problem that I was finding, of course, was, first of all, people in the hiking space aren't really looking to talk with people that are in the skincare space. And then
sure.
And then the second thing was that the heavily skincare podcasts themselves, there's so much competition there. And why would I want to go on a show that every episode they're interviewing somebody in skincare? I have no desire to do that. So instead, I started reaching out to functional medicine, and that was kind of part of that. Well, that coupled with the fact that that's the only thing I'm going to be talking about on my podcast, because that's where I can't imagine doing a podcast long term where we're talking about hiking and backpacking and gear. Right. But I can't imagine a long-term podcast where we're talking about health. Because again, this is just, so I started reaching out to these functional medicine people and started and they, of course, I mean, it's just looking at the number of people I've reached out to in that space and the number of accepts I've gotten, I think I've only gotten one person decline me. It's amazing. And not only that, but when I go on these shows, at the end, their jaw's on the floor and they're like, okay, this is incredible. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Thank you. It's validating, which is something else I feel like we need as entrepreneurs, because it's tough out there.
Oh, amen. It is, because it's just you.
Yeah.
You are just, and you're like, okay, does anybody, I mean, on so many levels, it's like, with content you create, whether it's podcast or social media, it's like, is anybody liking this? Am I helping people? Like, are we on the right path? And then you're trying to create something people love and build your brand. And then you're trying to sell and you're wearing the marketing hat and it's so much. And especially in the beginning, it's just you typically. So yeah, you need some of that like recognition and some of those wins. And I love that you started getting that from these other shows that you were being on and just getting out there to really build the brand and talk more, just really align with where you need to be to really let your expertise shine through.
Yeah. And honestly, it was the same way with podcasting as well. I didn't know what I was doing, like even how to start a podcast. And one of the reasons that I started that as well was to improve my public speaking ability, because I'm really good, believe it or not. When I have a presentation, I'm really good at presenting. But this kind of back and forth forum, that's a little bit, I don't know, I'm an engineer, and it's true that office space thing about engineers needing a communicator for the people, that is so true. So, so anyways, there's also that. You're trying to take I'm taking me as I am and trying to wear all the hats and also do the communication properly as a quote unquote normal person. And yeah.
Which is incredibly inspiring, Brandy. Like, I just have to say, I mean, for you to put yourself out there and not like define yourself or put barriers around yourself of saying, I'm an engineer, I'm a scientist, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not this like conversational podcast, interview person. Like, for you to just not have those barriers and limitations and just go. And we talked about this over wine. Like, I don't always know why, but I'm being pulled to do this. And when you listen to that, I just think that's really inspiring. Like, if there was someone who is an engineer who feels like, oh, I can't do that, or that might be a struggle. It might be harder or take an adjustment, but you still can do it. Like, you have so much value to add. And I love that you're just not holding yourself back.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of, honestly, a lot of that comes in how I was raised to have no limitations. So there's also that. And it mostly comes from growing up watching my grandmother, who really had no limitations, and she wouldn't have the tools on hand to fix something. She'd figure it out. I mean, totally MacGyvering everything from just duct tape and dental floss.
Wow. Oh my God, I love it. That is amazing. I did this weird move because I had this weird bug. If anybody's watching this, I have this like bug that's flying around. How cool though. I love that. A resource I gave to you, Marie Forleo, talks about everything is figure outable, which sounds like that is your grandma. Everything is figure outable. We're going to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. I love that you had that kind of influence. Okay, now one thing, so speaking of like going on these shows, really talking about your expertise and talking about like being more aligned with your brand and your messaging. I just want to take a pause and ask a question, because I was looking at your one sheet and all the content. You have so much content, like seriously, from an education standpoint. I want people to follow you, and we'll do a shout out at the end too, and I'll do it at the beginning. But The Alchemy of Things is the podcast we want to check out. But I saw like you don't wear sunscreen. We live in California, lots of sunshine. Will you tell me why you don't wear sunscreen?
Yes. So the FDA is there are 16 sunscreen ingredients that are approved for use or for sale in sunscreens in the US. Of those 16, FDA is reclassifying 14 of them. Wow. 2 of them, it's saying they're no longer approved as safe and effective. 12 of them, they're saying they need additional research from the company itself to show that it is safe and effective before they can market it. The FDA actually, yes, it's huge. That leaves 2, which are basically the 2 physical sunscreens, so zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, that are considered safe and effective. without any additional testing. So FDA ran a study that was actually published in JAMA, so Journal of American Medical Association, in, I believe it was 2019. I think I have that right. Believe it or not, FDA actually runs studies on occasion themselves. They lead studies on occasion. And this one they performed with 24 people who were using one of 4 different sunscreens that contained avobenzone as the active. And what they found was that in the individuals, avobenzone was making it into their bloodstream. Chemical sunscreens and physical sunscreens also only work when they sit on the surface of your skin. They do not work when they soak into your skin. And not only that, but a number of the chemical sunscreens are endocrine disrupting. Specifically, they disrupt the reproductive hormones, so either estrogen or testosterone or one of the other hormones associated with reproduction in males and females. So it's huge. Like that's kind of flipping it on its head. The reason I don't wear sunscreen is actually because back in 2013, my husband, who is also, so we both work in pharmaceutical formulation development now for our day jobs. And my husband back in 2013 was working on this process for, he needed to decolorize the final product that he was making for this synthesis. And the way that he did that was using titanium dioxide. So he'd make a slurry of titanium dioxide, which was basically powder, his product that he needed to decolorize. And then he would hit it with UV light. And in the presence of UV, titanium dioxide creates free radicals. This was breaking down that color particle in his product. And then at the end of it, he wound up with a colorless product. So I saw that and I said, what are we putting on our skins? I stopped wearing makeup at that point. Like I was so appalled. I straight up stopped wearing makeup. I stopped wearing sunscreen and I started wearing antioxidant sprays instead.
Wow. That is insane.
It was insane. Yes. Straight up scary. Like he's got a patent for that now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was straight up scary to actually see it because I'd walk into the room and I mean, we're talking this it's the color of molasses. And then at the end of it, it's colorless, like in the tank stirring and it's colorless. And
wow.
It was amazing.
Yeah. I love how you then just jumped into action and were like, no way, I'm changing what I'm putting on my skin. And then I'm going to make something ultimately that will help other women, and potential and men. I mean, it's insane. That's the thing that I know there's more education. I feel like there's more education coming out over the past couple of years from an environmental standpoint, sustainability, clean, green. We're seeing more of that. We're having more of those conversations. But there's still so much that's being sold to us that we have no idea. It makes me want to go look at all my ingredients and I'm probably going to be sad when I find. Oh, that's fascinating though. Do you have a spray that you sell then for sunscreen? Yeah, so
antioxidants and sunscreens work differently. The antioxidant spray offered by Rain Organica has not been subjected to any kind of SPF rating. However, basically any antioxidants provide, the official way to describe this is they protect from the effects of UV. So whereas sunscreens are the physical sunscreens are meant to act as a mirror. So when the UV rays hits your skin, they bounce off. So that's the physical sunscreen. The chemical sunscreens, when the UVA hits your skin, they should hit the chemical sunscreen barrier. And then those chemical sunscreens would react with the UV light, breaking it down into heat and free radicals. But free radicals are okay if they're on the surface of your skin because that's dead skin layers. The way that the antioxidants work is they soak into your skin. They're down in those living layers. When a UV ray hits your skin, penetrates your skin, gets into those living cell layers, the and generate free radicals, the antioxidants act as a sponge to soak those free radicals up. So then the free radicals aren't able to damage DNA. They aren't able to damage any other cellular structures, and they aren't able to damage the elastin and collagen fibers within your extracellular matrix.
Wow. That is fascinating. Okay. I know what I'm doing when we end here. I'm ordering some of that. How interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And again, this is where we just need more education in the industry. And so that's where I hope that people follow you on Instagram, your podcast. You've got so much great information in your industry. And we're keeping this one. We've got some tips there, and we're focusing a little bit more on the business aspect, but, I like, do I want to save this for the end or now? I feel like this is a good point to just ask, like, is there something else too from like a education standpoint that I'm sure there's so much, but that you're just really passionate about that you want to share on this show today too?
Well, just kind of sticking with the ways to protect your skin from the sun. So, of course, protective clothing, it doesn't have to be UPF rated. Any kind of clothing is going to protect your skin. Being sure you wear a hat. I am diligent about checking your skin, and especially behind your ears, the back of your neck, to be sure you don't have anything weird popping up. If you do have something weird and your dermatologist says, it's nothing or whatever, make them, if you're worried about it, either get a second opinion or just go back to them and make them biopsy it. Because I've got a friend who was in her 30s when she went into her dermatologist. He looked at a spot on her leg. He's like, yeah, it's nothing. It doesn't look like anything. You're fine. She went back to him a month later. She's like, I know you say it's okay, but please just do a biopsy. It was melanoma. And she has a scar probably this long on her leg for them to get the margins, for them to be sure they got clean margins.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was
a month later.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she was
came back
too young to, like, she was in her 30s when this happened. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about it. I also lost a grandmother to a weird kind of melanoma that's actually flesh colored. So there's that too. That, yes, who has ever even heard of flesh colored melanoma? I know.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, that's awful.
Yes. So any kind of, and she'd been seeing dermatologists, but they kept thinking it was a bacterial infection or something. So they would culture it, but they never actually biopsied it. And then finally somebody thought to biopsy it, and it was amelanotic melanoma, which is actually a thing. I mean, who knew?
Wow. That is really crazy. I'm sorry to hear about your grandma. That is like, my friend Robin says this all the time, that you have to be your biggest advocate.
That's absolutely
because
right.
So many times people say, nope, you're fine. Send you on your way. And I've heard this. I feel like I'm starting to hear this from a lot of people. And that's terrifying. So I'm so glad that you shared that, because that is something that we all can do. Definitely, like, don't be afraid. I get afraid. I have this side issue, and I didn't know what was going on. And all my friends are like, you gotta go. So I go, they're like, we think you're fine. They send me back. I go again and do the CAT scan, or I don't know, what did I do? I did an ultrasound and x-rays, didn't show anything, but still had this pain. And I was like afraid to say something again, because I'm like, I don't want to seem like I'm, like a baby or whatever. But I then did talk to Dr. Michelle about it, who then took a look, and then it was a very easy fix, and I'm better. But I held it within, because I'm like, no, I'm fine. It's probably mental. No, I'm fine. Somebody said I'm already fine, but we have to listen to our body, and then we have to be an advocate.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And honestly, that's a story that's been played out in my life more than once. It took 2 years for me to be diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I think I went to 5 different doctors. I had no appetite. And yet I was still gaining weight. And I pretty much said that straight up to one of the doctors that I went and saw was, I'm gaining weight and I have no appetite. And she's like, well, you're 35 and you're a woman. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me this is like a light switch? And she said, yeah. And she just totally dismissed me. And I think so many people don't know, and so many doctors don't know, that you need to test for thyroid peroxidase, and you need to test for thyroid what's the other one? TG, I think it's TGB is the acronym, thyroglobulin or something like that. But like so many doctors don't know. And my normal thyroid panel was fine, but my anti-TPO was high. So yeah.
Wow. What is Hashimoto's for those who don't know?
It's autoimmune thyroiditis, and it's actually low. So it's hypothyroid side of it instead of hyperthyroid, which would be Graves' disease.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. I have a friend that has Hashimoto's, and I wasn't really fully aware of what it was either, but I know that, I think she's gluten-free. Gluten really affects that. And, but yeah, you do. Doctors are not testing for everything. You have to see multiple people. You have to be an advocate. I'm so glad that you shared that as well. Okay, going back to our business, that was like our pause for our product education, advocate for yourself commercial break, coming back to business topics. So branding was a big part for you, pivoting, changing the message, really moving into you. That started building some momentum. What would you say is another lesson that you've learned over this past year?
Oh my goodness. I feel like so I am so glad, despite the conversation change, I'm so glad that I spent so much time and I might have already said this. I think it's worth reiterating. So much time in the beginning, really defining that ideal customer, because this is true whether you're service-based or product-based, because just think about your brand colors, your fonts, when it comes to product-based businesses, your labels, when I had that pivot, it's really just the copy on my website that changed. It was nothing else, because all of the rest of it still really meshed with my client or with my ideal customer. And the other thing that I think I was trying so hard to find that what I call the blue ocean, the unexplored space within the industry, that I was overlooking kind of something that was really obvious for myself, which is, why don't I just niche down where I'm really good at? Yes, I recognize there are other clean skincare brands. I get all of that. But the strong point of this brand is myself and is my knowledge. So with that, I just needed to niche down and actually make it known what I can share with the world. And I at this point, I have so many stories that aren't necessarily even skin related, but they are health related, that I think can help so many people. And this goes back to the point that, you make it so often on your show is, yes, it's be yourself and share what you know and share what you feel called to share. And that was really huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't always know why, right? It's like this weird push of like, supposed to do this. I'm supposed to keep going. I don't even know. I talk about this with the show. I don't even know exactly where I'm going with Crystal Uncorked. I have some ideas for sure, but it's like, I don't know. But what I'm being told right now is to stay the course. And you were so being pushed to do certain things. And I think like that's kind of the excitement of it all, right? Is that we don't know, but we just have to listen to ourselves and stay true to ourselves, which you really moved into that. And then be consistent and keep showing up. And then we are shown. And I think it's often something that we could have never even imagined, like that's why you couldn't have seen it, because you couldn't quite imagine that to be real or true or, so you just have to listen to those little nudges.
Yeah. And so I'm reading this book right now, Braiding Sweetgrass. I don't know if you've read it, but we talked about it last week, so I know you haven't read it. But anyways, one of the stories that I love from that is, so this medicine woman goes out. She had a dream the night before that she needed to take snake root with her to this village the next day. And it was weeks before the snake root was even supposed to be up, but she went out looking for it anyways. And so she was raised to never take the first plant that she finds, because it may be the last plant. So she happens to notice a snake root growing up, and she just walks over to it and she acknowledges it, and then she carries on and she looks for a while longer and she can't find any more snake root. So she decides to return home, and on her way home, she realizes that she's missing her little red shovel or her little red trowel. So she turns around to go back and find it, and it's got a red handle, so it's easy to see. It had fallen in a clump of snake root. And I feel like so often that's exactly us. It's when we do what we know, and when we follow our ethics, we just land where we're meant to be.
Yes. Oh, I love that. It's so true. It's alignment, right? And I think it's so easy when you're in business to, like, you were trying to look at that blue ocean, and it maybe took you a little off course. Like, if we really just look within, follow those nudges, follow our heart, be true to us, our ethics, we land where we're supposed to. We land, is it called snake root?
Yes, this was snake root that she was looking for.
Snake. So we land in the snake root.
Yeah.
and then she went to the village, right? And somebody needed it. Like
Right.
So it's like double. Yeah. She had this calling. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
What's the name of that book again?
Braiding Sweetgrass.
Braiding Seagrass. Awesome. We'll link to that. I want to check out that book. That sounds pretty cool. I love it. Okay, now something else. Well, okay, before I move into some time management stuff, which is totally a work related thing, but are there any other big ahas and lessons that you have learned in this past year with your business?
The other thing that I've learned is to keep it small. So in the beginning, I had a couple of, I was working with a couple of different businesses, especially for my labels. And I was like, well, I know I'm going to use them. Let me just order a ton of them now from this larger company. And I really wish I would have just stayed with the smaller company and ordered less, because yes, the labels haven't changed. Or when I say the labels haven't changed, I mean my fonts, my logo, all of that hasn't changed. But after a while in business, I'm like, oh, this just takes up better on a picture or takes up better in a photo. And like those original labels that I ordered so many of, it's really hard to photograph those well. And like, I just wish I'd stayed with the smaller company and ordered fewer so that I could work through that faster.
Right. Testing, right?
Yes.
Some of that. Yeah.
And like,
especially for like social too, like, you're testing for social in a way, but because of the content and just how it's looking on your website, on social, how is this selling? But it's like those things that you probably had no idea until you're in that moment and you're looking at this photo and being like, uh-oh.
Yes, that's exactly how it was. And so I wish I'd stayed small in that area for longer and really taken more baby steps, because that's kind of all me, is like, oh, just go all in.
Right. Well, and I think when we're excited about something and we're passionate, we're starting it, we're doing it, and we're like, I am fully committed. And so like, to prove my commitment, it's not always a prove. It's just like a mindset. It's a belief. I am here. So I am all in. So I'm going to get all the labels, like I'm going for it. I believe in this. And that's where we learn, and we're not always right. We're often not right in business, and you pivot and adjust. And that's where we just learn, which is one of many reasons I love business. It just teaches you something almost daily, whether you want to learn it in that moment or not. You get, there's definitely a lot of lessons. What else for you?
Well, I love what you just said, because I mean, that is one of the biggest things that's one of the most awesome things I think about being a business owner is, and especially with any kind of small business, honestly, is because things aren't set in stone. And so it is so easy to move and adjust and incorporate new lessons. And you don't have that same opportunity really, like when you're stuck working in a large organization.
Right. No, you don't. I can't imagine working for a corporation now, being in this. I've never really worked for a big corporation, I guess, but being able to be agile and make changes and shift and do what you need to do and have that flexibility, I really appreciate. And you can get so slowed down when you are in those bigger, corporations and organizations. So, and you said set in stone. I know that you have a saying that you like that's similar to that. Oh, when we know better, we do better.
Oh, yeah, that's not even mine.
Right.
Yeah, so I've got to give credit to Stephanie Sipter for that one. That's like her motto. That's how she ends all of her podcasts or all of her newsletters, one or the other. And I just love it. Like, I haven't told her yet, but I'm going to steal it. So she better go ahead and copyright it.
Yeah, seriously, but it's so true. It's so true. I want to say it again. When we know better, we do better. Absolutely. And that's where like I am such an advocate for learning. I love learning, and I'm just naturally a very curious person, but you always have to be learning. And especially I think today with such fast advancements and there's so much going on. And so the more we know, we can do better. So I love that. I'm sure there's like probably 5,000 other lessons that you've learned along the way, maybe even just this week. Like that's the nature of doing business and being an entrepreneur. But I do want to shift gears a little bit because we had a good conversation too about like time balance. And I think that this is something that a lot of people struggle with. I get really frustrated with Dustin. Like my boyfriend, I feel like he's on his phone a lot, but he is a realtor. He has a couple other businesses. Like he's so attached to it. But we were having a good conversation about just like the balance, because it's very easy to get like, especially when you're building a business, you're all in and your head is down. And there's an element of like that needing to happen. But of course, like you're not wanting it, you don't want it to be at the sacrifice of something that's very important. And you have to have balance. You just have to. It's not sustainable. You will have breakdowns. And so being more present in the personal life, I think can actually bring a lot more to your business too. But I would just love kind of your take on that, kind of having a work-life balance.
Yeah, and this is really tough, I feel like, because right now I'm juggling a day job along with this. And I know early on in the business, I was and this is a conversation I feel like I've also had with other entrepreneurs as well, okay, let me just speak for me, but just know that this is also what they're saying as well, is that even when I'm off, I'm still on because I'm still constantly thinking about it. And I had some really harsh reminders of the fact that time is finite and you better make the best of what you have now because you really don't know if you're going to get another chance. So with that, I've made a kind of a conscious effort to put up boundaries. And what I started doing now, my mindset I didn't focus on the mindset shift to begin with. What I focused on was just setting up boundaries. So for instance, upstairs is a cell phone free zone for me. So, and especially certain rooms of the house upstairs are cell phone free zones. And in addition to that, it was doing something simple like not taking my cell phone with me on the weekends. I've started not taking my cell phone with me when I leave the house unless I'm going to work. Well, I say that. Let me say, anytime that I'm with my husband, I'll leave my cell phone at home, or at least make an attempt to leave my cell phone at home. So that was huge because that removes that need to constantly check email, constantly check social, all this kind of thing. And it didn't happen overnight. But what has happened over time is that there has definitely been a shift in my mindset so that I can actually be off. The other really big thing that I'm still struggling with is shutting down the computer at the end of the day. So again, I'm just trying to cram as much business stuff as possible into the day after work. And there's kind of a time and a place for that. And it's shutting it off and actually getting ready for bed. That again, I'm still struggling with, but just the cell phone alone, I've noticed, and I cannot believe how big of a difference it's made, because I was having conversations with other business owners and they're like, if I weren't thinking about my business during my free time, I don't even know what I would be doing. Like, I have forgotten how to have fun outside of this anymore, like actually have hobbies and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way, or was definitely the same way. And on weekends, like if we're not doing anything, if we're not going out, I'll say, okay, well, between these hours, and I'll make it a block of time, like 5 hours, I can't be doing work stuff. I have to be doing something else. So yeah, but it's crazy how the mindset shift came after I implemented those restrictions.
Right. I know. It is pretty crazy. And I feel like there's somebody who might be watching this or listening thinking like, what? But I love what I do. I love it. It's not work. I love it. But and everybody has their own take on everything and different things that work for them. I will just say I was like that too. And my boyfriend be like, you need a hobby. And I'm like, what? Why? Why do I need a hobby? It like never even crossed my mind. I'm like, I have my business. Like, I don't need a hobby. And I loved it. And I was doing a lot of it. And then I got really good at delegating, building a team, creating more space in my schedule, which can be so filled with like thinking. You really are never off. I feel like when you own a business, it's constantly like happening in your brain. But I did have more time. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, you're right. I need a hobby. Like what am I going to do with my time? Like I do need something. So that was a big aha. But like even you saying cell phone free zones and then leaving the house without it, because then there's no reason for you to check because you absolutely cannot. And I bet you have those moments of like, you're going for the phone, but you're like, oh, didn't bring the phone. Don't need to look. Okay. I am present. I am here. Like, does that happen to you?
That definitely happened in the early days.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. Oh my goodness. Like, I feel like it's been such a habit for so long that I'm actually kind of surprised how fast I was able to break it. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I wasn't as far gone as I thought I was.
No, but you know what? I honestly think there is something to that. I'm so thankful you're saying this, because I think that we have this thought of like, there's no way I could leave the house without my phone. There is no way I can't take it to bed with me, or I'm going to go somewhere or whatever. Like, we're so attached. And I think especially the youth, like our younger generations. But like on a podcast episode, we went to Hawaii and I'm like, no social media. And so I saw it on my phone, but I was like, oh, I don't really have much to do on here. I'm not checking email or social. And then it was a weird feeling, but a few days into it, it was like, cool. I was fine. It didn't take so long. Like, it is addictive, but you all of a sudden really can shift and change. And I think that's so critical for our well-being and for our relationships, because we are more present. It's more sustainable for the business because you bring more when you're rested and you have a break. So I just love what you're doing, and it's inspiring. Like, I need to do a little bit more of it myself.
I will say that's the other thing that I've noticed by making these breaks, because I was always like, I'm just, if I work less, I'm not going to get as much done. But the thing that I've noticed is like you said, you bring so much more to the table when you're rested and when you've had a break. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm actually more productive. How is that possible?
Yep. Hands down. And that is such a or like whatever the word I want. Like, people don't see it that way, misconstrued like thought, where you do think I have to work, I have to hustle, I have to go all the time. That's how I produce. That's how I'm on top. That's how I win. But really it's like, no, take a break and then re-energize yourself. And then tell me how productful you were. Productful. I make up words, by the way. I haven't used that one in a while. Productive you were. And I bet you got a lot more done when you took that break than what you were doing before. It just will create burnout. So, I love it. I love that you're doing that. And, I love our conversation. Like so much. Like I so remember the first year, and almost in a way, being an entrepreneur, it doesn't always change. Like I'm going into my 9th year of business, and in a way it almost feels like it's the beginning. Like you go through these stages and these periods. And, I just really appreciate you sharing the lessons that you've learned and some of the education in your industry. I know you have so much more to share. The Alchemy of Things is the podcast. I have one final question for you, Brandy. When we had wine, I was just like, I was driving home thinking about like, oh my gosh, I have so much respect for this woman, because we were talking about social media, which I obviously have a social media company. And, we were just like, there was ideas being exchanged and stuff. And you're like, the whole marketing piece and social media, I'm a scientist. And I was just like driving home being like, if a scientist engineer can be showing up because you're doing a great job with your content and you get in front of that camera and you just share and you're consistent, if you can do it, anyone can. Like I work with a lot of people who have fear of doing it, or who hold themselves back, or who don't make time for it, or so many things. But you do such a great job. But I kind of want to hear from you, like, scientist marketing, how do you feel about creating your social media content?
Well, I mega loathe social media. To be honest, I outsourced it. Somebody else is creating my Instagram and also my Pinterest, even at this point, which I know isn't social, but still. That being said, because they constantly ask, hey, can you just do a video right quick? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll get up there. My hair never looks good. There's a reason I don't do hair care. But anyways, I'll get on there and make a video for you. No problem. I don't know. Like stage fright has never really been a thing. And I think so. My sales coach has this saying that you just get your mindset right, and it's actually really easy. Well, okay, I say it's really easy. The thing that you repeat to yourself is really easy. How's that?
Oh my God. Amen. Seriously. Oh, truth.
She says every time before she gets on stage, she says 4 things, and they call it the neuro-linguistic programming mandala. And if this was good enough for JFK, it's good enough for you. And those 4 things are, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're here. I know what I know, and I care about you. So, and with that, then she just walks up on stage and she's herself. And I think with each of those things, it's a statement of, it's okay to be myself. I know what I know. And by caring about the other person, of course, it's an opportunity to be completely transparent about that. Yeah. So right. It's okay to say, oh, I don't know that. Like, it's okay to be human, because that's right. What we all are. And I think I'm fortunate in a lot of ways and like I say, I think it goes back to how I was raised, because not only could my grandmother MacGyver things, but my dad could pretty much do the same thing. And just being raised around, like, there's no limitations. If you want something to work, you can make it work. And it's the same thing with, there's no limitations. If you want to make videos and you want to get better at it, just start. I mean, right now, if you go back and listen to, I think it's either my 3rd or 4th podcast episode, it's like the worst thing ever. I'm going to re-record it, but it's out there.
Yep. Totally. I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast, but they're really getting hung up on the details of the look of it. And I'm like, go look at anybody that you admire. Go look at their first YouTube video. Go listen to their first podcast. It's going to be awful. The sound's going to suck. It's going to be dark. Like, just start, because you will then start getting in your groove and you will learn from that. So it's true. And then hire help. I mean, you're just transparent saying, I have somebody who helps me. And then they send content ideas. You create the content because you're the face, you're the expert. So you do need to be a part of it, but you don't have to be the one that's like designing the reels or doing the editing for the TikTok and uploading it. Like, that is a best case scenario, I think, because let's let you be a scientist and the expert, and let's let somebody else spend the time creating that content. Love it. Good. Okay, Brandy, what is the best way? Where's the best place you want to send people to learn more and check you out?
Well, rainorganica.com, and there will be a link in the show notes today if you want to grab a free guide for how to simplify your skincare routine and still meet all of your skin's needs. So there'll be a link to that in the show notes. And of course, if you would like to save 15% off your first purchase, you can use the code Crystal Uncorked at checkout.
Yay! I love it. Thank you so much for the offer. Thank you so much for your time and just opening up and sharing. Another cheers here. This was so nice to do this. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Brandy, thank you so much. We have everything that Brandy mentioned on the show notes. So check that out. Check her out. And I will see you on the next See You. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Are you on Instagram? I'd love to see pictures of you listening to the show, a screenshot of your favorite episode, and/or your favorite wines. Share them with me. Just follow and tag at Crystal Uncorked. I can't wait to see you there. All right, I'll see you on the next See You.